All right, welcome to day 4. Our homework, we got packet page 27 and 28. You also have your problems that you can be working on as well, but not due for a little bit. For the warm-up, you're going to want to draw a picture for it, and then see if you can label your picture, including your angles. Note, legs are the non-hypotenuse sides, and because it's a 45, 45, 90, those legs should be equal. So we're going to pause the video. This should only take you about a minute to do. It should be a pretty quick question, but we'll pause the video for a minute. Or actually, we'll go 2 minutes so that you can draw the picture and then give that a try. All right, so we'll draw ourselves a right triangle. They said it's a 45, 45, 90 right triangle, so we'll put those angles in. The legs are the non-hypotenuse sides, so those they told us were both 5. So we'll put, as step 1, we always put in our D's. So the 45, 45, 90 has D, D, and D square root of 2. Take one of the sides that has a number and set up an equation. So we'll take one of these, D must be 5. So this side is just supposed to be that D times square root of 2. So the hypotenuse we just got is 5 square root of 2. Looking over to the homework, so we have a 30, 60, 90. Across from the 30 is D, across from 90 is 2D, across from 60 is D squared of 3. So that's step 1 to label your D's. Step 2, find the side that has an actual number and set up an equation. So we've got 9 equals D as our equation. Step 3, fill that D in for the other ones. So X now is just 2 times D, which gave us 18. Y is D square root of 3, so 9 square root of 3. In B, step 1, label your D's. Across from the 30 is D, across from 60 is D square root of 3, across from 90 is 2D. Step 2, go to the one that has a number. So we'll set up an equation. 5 square root of 3 equals D square root of 3. We'll divide both sides by square root of 3. Notice the square root of 3's wipe out, so we get D equals 5. Step 3, fill that D value in for the other sides. So X is just going to be 5, and Y will be 2 times 5, so 10. C, we've got a 45, 45, 90. So step 1, fill in your D's. D, D, D square root of 2. Step 2, find the one that has a number for the side, and we'll set up an equation. D equals 3, no solving needed there. Step 3, fill that value of D in to get the other side. So Y is just 3, X is 3 square root of 2. In question D, 30, 60, 90, fill in your D's. Across from 30 is D, across from 60 is D radical 3, across from 90 is 2D. That's step 1. Step 2, take the side that has a number and set up an equation with that. So we have 30 equals D square root of 3. We divided both sides by square root of 3, and that gave us this 30 over radical 3. We need to get the square root out of the bottom, so we multiplied top and bottom by square root of 3. That gave us 30 square root of 3 over 3. Divide the 30 and the 3, that gives you 10 square root of 3 for D. From there, we'll fill that in for our D's. So X is easy, it's just that 10 square root of 3. For 90, we'll have 2 times 10 square root of 3. So the 2 and the 10 multiply to give us 20 square root of 3. In E, step 1, label your D's. So D across from 30, D square root of 3 across from 60, 2D across from 90. Step 2, take the side that has a number and set up an equation. So 12 equals 2D, we solved to get D is equal to 6. So Y was just D, that's 6. And X was D square root of 3, so we get 6 square root of 3. In F, we've got a 45, 45, 90. So step 1, label with your D's. Across from the 45s are D, across from 90 is D square root of 2. Step 2, set up an equation with the one that has a number for the side. So 6 equals D square root of 2. We'll divide both sides by 6 square root of 2. That gives us this 6 over square root of 2. We want the square root out of the bottom, so we'll multiply numerator and denominator by square root of 2. That gives us 6 square root of 2 over 2. Divide the 6 and the 2 to give us 3 square root of 2. Now that you have your d, we've done all the hard work. X and y are both just d, so x and y are 3 square root of 2. As we go on to question 2, we've got a 45, 45, 90. So step 1, put in your d's. D square root of 2. Step 2, set up an equation with the side that has an actual number. So d is just square root of 2. So that is what x is, square root of 2. And for y, we have d times square root of 2. So if you have d times square root of 2, fill that square root of 2 in for d, and now we have square root of 2 times square root of 2. Well, we know any square root times itself is just the number underneath, so y is just 2. In B, we've got a 45, 45, 90, so label your d square root of 2. Step 2, set up an equation with the side that has a number. So d square root of 2 equals 15 square root of 2. Divide both sides by square root of 2. The square root of 2's divide out, so d is just 15. And x and y were both just d, so x and y are just 15. In C, step 1, we've got the same sides. So this is an isosceles triangle. So therefore the angles across must be the same. So this is a 45, 45, 90. Put in your d square root of 2. That's step 1. Step 2, take one of the sides that has a number, set up an equation. So we have d equals square root of 5. And then all we need to find is y, which is d times square root of 2. Well, if you have d times square root of 2, and d is square root of 5, fill that in. So we get square root of 5 times square root of 2. Multiply those insides, you get y is square root of 10. Looking at question D, we got a 30, 60, 90 triangle. Put in your d across from the 30, d square root of 3 across from 60, 2d across from 90. Step 2, find the side that has a number. We'll set up an equation, 2d equals 2 square root of 3. To get d by itself, we'll divide both sides by 2. The 2 divided out, and we have d is square root of 3. So therefore, x is just that d value of square root of 3. Y is d times square root of 3. Well, because d was square root of 3, we end up with square root of 3 times square root of 3, so y is just 3. In E, we've got a 30, 60, 90 triangle. Across from 30 is d, across from 60 is d square root of 3, across from 90 is 2d. Step 2, set up an equation with the side that has a number. No solving needed, we get d equals 12. Just fill the d in, so we get 12 square root of 3 for y, 2 times 12 gives us 24 for x. In F, we've got a 30, 60, 90, so label your d across from 30, d square root of 3 across from 60, and your 2d across from 90. Step 2, find the side that has a number, and we'll set up an equation. D square root of 3 equals 9 square root of 3. To get d by itself, we'll divide both sides by square root of 3, and d is 9. From there, x was just d, so x is 9, and double the 9 to get y is 18. And for 3 had a lot going on because you had 2 triangles in each. Now notice we have the letter d, so we can't use like d, and d square root of 3 because d is in the problem. So I used x for this one. So I started with my left-hand triangle. That's drawn in black there. So we have a 30, 60, and a 90. So for across from the 30, I put x, across from the 60, x radical 3, and across from the 90, I put 2x. Find the side that has a number, the 4 square root of 3, and I set up an equation. I divided both sides by 2 to get that x was just 2 square root of 3. We'll now fill in that 2 square root of 3 for the other sides. C was straightforward, it was just x. But little a is x times square root of 3. So the 2 square root of 3 has to get filled in for x. So you have 2 square root of 3 times square root of 3. We know a square root times itself is just the number, so 2 times 3. So therefore we get 6 for little a. Well, now moving over to the other triangle, which is a 45, 45, 90, we got that this side was 6 from the previous triangle. So now I'm using, instead of x, I used y, because we can't use d because we have d in the problem. So I did y square root of 2. Find your side that has a number. We know y is 6, so d is 6, and b is just 6 square root of 2. Similar idea over in the next question. In the left-hand triangle, we had a 30, 60, 90. The one that had, or I should say, we had to start with the right-hand triangle because that's the one that had a number for the side. So we had 10 for that side. So I set up the equation of 2x equals 10 to get x equals 5. That then gave us that this side across from the 30, the D, was 5, and this one was 5 square root of 3. And then I used that in the other triangle. That's across from the 30, so I used y in this case, y square root of 3 and 2y. So fill in the 5 square root of 3, and you get 15 for C and 10 square root of 3 for little a. We're going to practice this same special right triangle stuff today, but within some other figures. So if we flip to the next page in our packet, which I believe this is page 21, we just need to review a couple shapes and things we know about those shapes. So as I draw in these, make sure to draw them on your packet so you have them as a reference. So what is an equilateral triangle? So some things we know about an equilateral triangle: all sides are the same. So I'm going to put the tick marks on them to all show the same. And if the sides are all the same, then the angles are all the same. Well, we know the angles in a triangle have to add up to 180. So if you divide by 3, that would give us 60, meaning each angle in an equilateral triangle is 60. So knowing that angle measure in the equilateral triangle will become important. An isosceles triangle is a triangle that has two congruent sides. So something like that. If we have an isosceles right triangle, it would end up looking like this. The legs have to be the congruent sides because the hypotenuse has to be larger than all other sides. So if we dealt with an isosceles right triangle, that would guarantee us it's got to be a 45, 45, 90 triangle. And then lastly, an isosceles trapezoid. It's probably the type of trapezoid you visualize, but it means that it has two congruent sides, those two sides that are not parallel. So we will see these shapes come up within questions today. And then I just want to recap our special right triangles. We need to be getting to the point where we are memorizing these. The D's go based on the angle measures. We should have these written on either the front or back of our packet from last class. So if I went 30 and 60 like this, across from my 30 is the D, across from the 60 is D squared of 3, and across from the 90 is 2D. If this one was our 45, 45, 90, across from each 45 is D, because congruent angles should have congruent sides across from them, and then we have D squared of 2 for across from the 90. So we're going to be using these same triangles today in class. So if we go down to the bottom of this page, we're given a square. So something we know about squares are all sides are congruent. So let's put a tick mark on all those. And we know all angles are 90-degree angles. So let's put in the ones that didn't get split up, let's put in our right angle. Now because we have our tick marks, if that one side is x, the other side is x as well, which makes this an isosceles right triangle. If it's an isosceles right triangle, those angles should also be the same. So these would each have to be 45-degree angles. So really, if we look at just the triangle, this has become a 45, 45, 90 question. So as we saw yesterday, step one, once we've identified which triangle, is put in your D's. So across from the 45s, I'm going to put in D. Across from the 90, I'll put in D squared of 2. Step 2, find the side that has a number. And we're going to set up an equation for that. We'll have 6 equals D squared of 2. We'll now solve that equation to get D by itself. The opposite of multiplying is dividing. So we'll divide square root of 2 on both sides. That gives us 6 over square root of 2 equals D. We want to rationalize our denominator, which means we do not want to leave a square root in the denominator. So we're going to multiply top and bottom by square root of 2. This will give us 6 square root of 2 in the numerator, and in the denominator, any square root times itself is just the number underneath, so we just get 2. Lastly, we'll look at the numbers that are not under square roots, and we can divide them, so we end up getting 3 square root of 2 for D. We now need to find what x is. Well, x was just the same as D. We know D is 3 square root of 2, so x will just be 3 square root of 2. Moving over to page 22. In both these, we want to find the value of x. In that triangle in question A, we've got a 60 and a 90, so that tells us the other one has to be 30. Once we've got our angles in our triangle, step 1 is always to label our d's. Across from the 30 should be d. Across from the 60 should be d squared root of 3, and across from the 90 is 2d. Step 2, find the side that has an actual number, and we'll set up an equation. So we're going to have d equals 7. No solving we have to do to get d by itself. Step 3, fill in for d for whatever we want to find. Notice our x is just d squared root of 3. So we'll have x equals, we'll put that 7 in for d. So we have x is 7 square root of 3. In question B, notice we have a 45 and we have a 90. So the other angle must be 45. Once we've got our angles labeled, step 1, label your d's. Across from each 45 is a d, and across from the 90 is d squared root of 2. Step 2, find the side that has a number, and we're going to set up an equation. So d equals 4 square root of 2. No solving needed in this case. Step 3, we're going to take this d value and fill it in for d on the side we want to find. So x is equal to, we're going to put d in, and then we'll still have to multiply by square root of 2. So 4 square root of 2 times, this part was the d, another square root of 2. Square root of 2 times square root of 2 is just 2, so this is really 4 times 2, or in other words, x is just 8. For 3, we've got an equilateral triangle. So equilateral triangles, we know all of our sides are the same. We also know all the angles are 60. So these angles that were not split are 60. So if we work, say, with the right-hand triangle, because that's where the 10 is, we've got 60, 90, so the top angle must be 30. Once you've got your angles in the triangle labeled, label your d's. Across from the 30, we've got d. Across from 60 is d squared root of 3. Across from 90 would be 2d. Step 2, set up an equation based on our number. So we're going to have 2d equals 10, and we'll solve that equation by dividing by 2 to get d equals 5. We want to find x in this problem, so step 3 is just fill that d value in to find whatever we're looking for. We had d times square root of 3, so we'll just have 5 times square root of 3 for x. In the next question, we've got an isosceles right triangle. If you have congruent legs, the angles across from them must be congruent. So this must be then a 45, 45, 90. Once we have our angles in, put in your d's. Across from the 45 is d. Across from the 90 is d squared root of 2. Step 2, find the side that has a number, and we'll set up an equation. So d squared root of 2 equals 4. We want to get d by itself. So opposite operation of multiplying is dividing. This will give us d equals 4 over square root of 2. We want to rationalize our denominator, so we'll multiply top and bottom by square root of 2. This will give us that d is 4 square root of 2 over 2. And then last step, to find the d, we'll divide those numbers not under the square root, so we get that d is 2 square root of 2. Final step of the problem, find the variable we're looking for. We're looking for x, which was just d, so therefore x is just 2 square root of 2. Going over to the next page, page 23. We don't have a picture in this question. Let's start by drawing the picture. Base of an isosceles right triangle. So an isosceles right triangle, we'll just start a right triangle to start out. Isosceles should have two congruent sides, so we'll put our tick marks in. They tell us the base of it is 3 square root of 2. So we could in fact also label this 3 square root of 2 because we have our tick marks. And our other angles, if we have the two congruent sides, the angles across from those should be congruent as well. So we can label that they are 45. Well, this question's a little different. They want us to find the area of this triangle. Area of a triangle is 1/2 the base times the height. Where that comes from is an area of a rectangle is base times height, and a triangle would be half of that space. That's why we have 1/2 base times height. So in this case, our area is just going to be 1/2 our base of 3 square root of 2 times the height of 3 square root of 2. Your height and base must always form a right angle with each other. So I'm going to multiply our square root parts first. So we're going to have 1/2. The 3 times the 3 out front will give us a 9. Square root of 2 times square root of 2, we know when we multiply a square root by itself, it's just the number underneath, so we have times 2. Well, this is going to be 1/2 times 18 now, or in other words, 9. Whenever you have an area, our units should be whatever the units are squared. If they don't give us units, we'll just write units squared. Going down to the next one, number 6, we've got another area problem. We've got a square with a diagonal of length 12. So we'll give you 15 seconds. See if you can draw a square with diagonal length 12 and label as much as you can in the picture. So here's my square. I'm going to draw in a diagonal. If you drew the other one in, that's fine. Here's 12. We know we have 4 congruent sides, so I'm going to put my tick marks in. We know we have right angles. Because we have the congruent sides, these angles must be 45s. And we want to find the area of the square. You find area of a square by doing side times side. So I'm just going to put an X on these sides because that's what we're looking for. So step 1, we're going to put in our d's. We've got d, d, and d square root of 2. Step 2, take the side that has a number and set up an equation. So we'll have 12 equals d square root of 2. We're going to work to get d by itself. We'll divide both sides by square root of 2. That gives us 12 over square root of 2 equals d. We'll multiply top and bottom by square root of 2. So that gives us 12 square root of 2 over 2 equals d. And the numbers not under the square root, we'll divide them. We get 6 square root of 2 for d. So that means that each of these sides, because they were just going to be d, are going to be 6 square root of 2. when you find the area of a square, it's base times height, or in fact, it's the same thing, side times side. So we'll have 6 squared root of 2 times 6 squared root of 2. I'm going to multiply the numbers out front together. So we get 36. We'll multiply the square root of 2 times square root of 2 together. We get 2. 36 times 2 will just give us 72, and it's an area, so we have units squared. So we're going to do 2 more problems in this video. And I'd like to, maybe we'll just do 1 more. Let's flip ahead to page 25 and look at number 8. So we've got the altitude of an equilateral triangle. An altitude goes from a vertex and forms a right angle with the opposite side. So let's maybe go from our vertex at the top. We'll draw our altitude down, and it's perpendicular, or in other words, forming a right angle with that opposite side. We had an equilateral triangle. So we have our 3 sides the same. And if all the sides the same, those original angles were the same, so they were each 60. Well, we now have a 60, 90, so the other angle has to be 30. They told us in the question that the altitude that we drew in was 5 square root of 3. And we want to find the length of a side in the triangle. So one of those places we put a tick mark, I'm just going to call that X. So step 1, now that we've got our picture drawn, let's put in our D's. Across from 30 is D, across from 60 is D squared root of 3, and across from 90 is 2D. Step 2, we'll take the side that has a number, the 5 squared root of 3, and we'll set up an equation. That's equal to D squared root of 3. We're going to work to get D by itself, so we'll divide both sides by square root of 3. The square root of 3's divide out, so D is just 5. Well, now to find our side length, which we called X, it's just 2 times our D value, or in other words, 2 times 5, so we get 10. So we're going to stop there for the video. Any time that is left in the period, you can work on your homework. Have a good rest of your day.